On March 21st, 2019, on a city bus traveling down Fremont Street in Las Vegas, passengers sat in their seats. What happened on that bus that day would soon make headlines across the country, and it would all be caught on camera. These are some of the darkest and most disturbing moments that were caught on camera. 74-year-old Serge Fournier was among the passengers that afternoon. Friends would later describe him as kind, soft-spoken and polite. The kind of man who held doors open for strangers and always said thank you. Fournier walked with the help of a folding cart, a simple aid to help him carry things. Another passenger on that same bus, Kadesha Bishop, a 25-year-old woman, was not in a calm mood. Witnesses later told police she had been shouting and cursing at people during the ride, directing profanity toward nearly everyone around her. According to police reports, at one point, Fournier leaned over and told her in a friendly way, "You should be nicer to the passengers." The bus came to a stop. The doors opened and passengers began to exit. The security cameras on board recorded. The footage, later released by Las Vegas police, shows Fournier slowly making his way toward the door, holding his folding cart in his hands as he prepares to step off the bus. Behind him, Bishop is standing. She's angry. As Fournier steps down, she suddenly lunges forward and shoves him hard with both hands. A full-force push straight to his back. The 74-year-old man stumbles forward helplessly. He hits the pavement face first, his cart clattering beside him. People shout in shock as Fournier lies motionless on the sidewalk. Bishop doesn't help him. She doesn't even look down. She takes a seat on the bus, leaving him there. The driver radios for help. Someone calls 911. Dazed and hurt, Serge refuses medical treatment at first. He insists he'll be fine. But later that night, the pain becomes unbearable. He goes to the hospital, and doctors discover the extent of his injuries. Over the following weeks, his condition worsens. He suffers from internal injuries. The damage is too severe for his body to recover. On April 23rd, 2019, more than a month after the shove, Serge Fournier dies. The Clark County Coroner's Office rules his death a homicide. When police review the surveillance footage, there's no question about what happened. They identify the woman in the video as Kadesha Bishop, who had vanished after the incident. It takes several weeks before officers are able to track her down and arrest her. She's charged with murder of an elderly or vulnerable person, a serious felony. As investigators dug into Bishop's past, they learned this wasn't her first violent outburst. She had 2 prior convictions for misdemeanor battery before the bus incident. Police records showed a pattern of anger and aggression, moments where she lashed out physically against others. In court, prosecutors argued that Bishop's actions were reckless and deliberate, that she pushed Fournier with enough force to kill. Her defense team claimed she never intended to harm him, that it was a moment of frustration that spiraled out of control. In 2023, after years of legal back and forth, Kadesha Bishop pleaded guilty to a reduced charge, abuse of an older person resulting in death. As part of her plea agreement, prosecutors dropped the murder charge. On the day of sentencing, she appeared before the court, now 28 years old. The judge handed down her punishment, 8 to 20 years in prison. She would receive credit for 252 days of time already served. In the summer of 2022, a disturbing story began to unfold inside a gated community in Irvine, California. A successful doctor couple living in a $2.6 million home, raising 2 children in one of the safest cities in America. But behind closed doors, radiologist Jack Chan started to notice something strange. His health was failing. He suffered from stomach ulcers, a swollen esophagus, and a burning pain that wouldn't go away. At first, he thought it might be stress or maybe a chronic illness. But then, he began to notice something else, a chemical taste in his morning hot lemonade. That's when suspicion set in. Jack Chen believed someone was trying to poison him, and that someone he feared was his wife. Her name was Dr. Yu, a 45-year-old dermatologist who was also well respected in her field. To friends and colleagues, she was intelligent and successful, but Chen claimed there was another side to her, one marked by years of emotional abuse and violent outbursts. Not wanting to accuse his wife without proof, Chen secretly rigged his kitchen with surveillance cameras. For days, the cameras rolled silently, capturing the family's daily routine, and eventually, the evidence was undeniable. The footage, which later surfaced in court documents and news reports, allegedly showed Yu pouring Drano, a powerful drain cleaner, into his drinks. He was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts of poisoning and 1 felony count of corporal injury on the spouse. If convicted, she faced a maximum of 8 years in prison. She was released on $30,000 bail, but the charges loomed over her as the case unfolded in both criminal court and divorce proceedings. As the legal battle heated up, darker allegations surfaced. Chen claimed that not only had his wife been poisoning him, but that she and her mother had physically abused their 2 children for years. The children were only 10 and 8 at the time. A therapist later testified that Chen's daughter admitted she was terrified her mother might poison her too. The girl described how her mother had coached her to lie during custody disputes, telling her to say she wanted to be with her mother 24/7. When the child confided to her therapist that she didn't want to lie, she explained, "Because if I don't, it would make my mom angry." When pressed on why she was so afraid of her mother's anger, the daughter responded, "Because what if she does what she did to my dad to me?" The therapist asked directly, "Are you afraid that your mom would kill you?" The girl answered, "Yes." The daughter also described being beaten with the leg of a chair, not just by her mother, but by her grandmother as well. According to reports, Yu even coached the kids to lie about why the family kept bottles of Drano around the house. The story they were supposed to tell was that the family had an ant infestation and that their father had refused to buy traps. With testimony like this, a judge suspended Yu's in-person visitation rights. She was allowed to see her children only through supervised and monitored sessions. Yet Yu and her attorneys denied everything.
We believe once again that this was a setup by the father in order to gain custody and establish a divorce between he and his wife and then pursue her assets. She did not ever use it to poison her husband. She's a 45-year-old well-respected dermatologist who would never harm anyone, much less her husband and her children.
They claimed the poisoning allegations were nothing more than an elaborate setup orchestrated by Chen to win custody and gain control over her assets. Yu's attorney argued that the Drano had nothing to do with poisoning anyone. Instead, they claimed it was simply being used to deal with a household problem: ants. According to her defense team, Chen himself had suggested using Drano mixed into lemonade or tea to attract and kill the insects. They accused him of setting up spy cameras in the kitchen, just so he could catch her on tape and frame her during a contentious divorce. They painted her as a victim of manipulation, a respected dermatologist suddenly facing the destruction of her career and reputation. Meanwhile, Jack Chen's condition improved once he stopped drinking the allegedly tainted beverages. He filed for divorce the very same day he sought an order of protection, severing ties with Yu while also moving to protect their children. By late 2022, Yu's legal troubles had become a battle on 2 fronts: the criminal case for poisoning and the family court case over custody and allegations of abuse. But then, in 2024, came an unexpected twist. Prosecutors announced they would need to dismiss the criminal charges, at least temporarily. A key witness whose testimony was crucial to the trial would not be available. Without that testimony, the case couldn't proceed. The charges were dropped, but prosecutors immediately stated their intention to refile the case once the witness could appear. It was a frustrating development for Chen, who had already provided video evidence and testimony about his declining health. Her lawyers continued to argue that Chen's stomach problems weren't caused by poisoning at all, but by gastroesophageal reflux disease, a common condition that can lead to ulcers and other issues. They insisted that Yu never harmed her husband, never abused her children, and that the accusations were nothing more than a smear campaign. For many observers, the explanation that she was setting ant traps seems almost impossible to believe. What is clear is that the case has left scars on everyone involved. The children, once caught between their parents, have publicly voiced fear of their mother. Chen has said he is still recovering, both physically and emotionally. It was just before noon on a Tuesday in Hernando, Florida. Inside a small Dollar General, a mother and her 13-year-old daughter were shopping together. They weren't in any hurry, but someone else was in that store. Someone who wasn't there to shop. His name was Craig Bonello, 30 years old. Surveillance footage shows him wandering the aisles of the Dollar General, not really looking at anything, just pacing. He glances around a few times, scanning the store and focusing in on the mother and daughter. He doesn't approach them right away. Instead, he circles, pretending to browse. His behavior doesn't immediately stand out, but in hindsight, it's disturbing. And then, in a split second, Bonello lunges toward the 13-year-old girl. He grabs her by the arm and begins to drag her toward the exit. The girl screams, struggling to break free, but he's much stronger. She digs her feet into the tile floor. The girl's mother reacts instantly. She doesn't hesitate for even a second. She throws herself at Bonello, clawing and pulling, trying to rip her daughter out of his grasp. The store's security camera captures the chaos, a full-on tug-of-war between a mother and a kidnapper. Bonello yanks one way. The mother pulls the other. The girl is caught in the middle, screaming as both adults fight with everything they have. For a terrifying few seconds, it looks like he might actually succeed. The mother refuses to let go. No matter how much he pulls, she fights like her life depends on it. Bonello can't overpower her, and he finally gives up, releases the girl, and bolts out of the store. Outside in the parking lot sits Deputy Jonathan Bainan, a deputy who just happens to be off duty at the time. He's sitting in his patrol car, maybe taking a short break, when he hears the store manager screaming for help. The deputy looks up and sees Bonello sprinting from the store toward his vehicle. The manager yells that a man just tried to kidnap a child. Without hesitation, Bainan throws his patrol car into gear and swings it directly in front of Bonello's vehicle, blocking the exit. Bonello slams to a stop. The deputy steps out, gun drawn, and orders Bonello to get out of the car. Bonello hesitates for a moment before complying. Within seconds, Bainan has him in custody. Inside the store, the mother is holding her daughter close.
It's sad that we have people like that in society, I think. And I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did, because like the sheriff said, who knows what he would have done later on in the day or a week from now.
Records show that Craig Bonello wasn't new to law enforcement. He'd been arrested several times before for trespassing, misdemeanors, and for aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer back in 2009. Bonello was booked into the Citrus County Jail and charged with kidnapping and child abuse. His motive was unclear. There was no connection between him and the girl, no previous interaction, and no apparent reason. In Kemerovo, a city in southwestern Siberia, stood the winter cherry shopping and entertainment complex, a popular family destination. The mall had opened in 2013, repurposed from what used to be a Soviet-era candy factory. It was massive, 23,000 square meters of shops, a bowling alley, a petting zoo, and a children's play area that sprawled across the upper floors. The Winter Cherry was described by many as a labyrinth, a maze of corridors and staircases that didn't quite make sense. There were few windows and fewer clear exits. The entire upper section of the mall, which held the cinemas, play areas, and food court, could only be accessed by one main staircase, one lift shaft, and one escalator. There were no easy escape routes, and when disaster struck, that design would become a death trap. It was March 25th, 2018, the first day of Russia's spring school holidays. Dozens of families had come to the mall to celebrate the start of the break. Parents took their kids to the play zone, while others filled the 3 movie theaters on the top floor. One of the films showing that day was Sherlock Gnomes, a harmless animated comedy that drew dozens of excited children. It started as a normal afternoon, but then, on the 4th floor, inside the children's play area, something sparked. According to investigators, it was an electrical fault. A spark from a light fixture that fell onto the foam rubber padding in a trampoline room. Another theory suggested the plastic in the lamp melted, falling onto the foam rubber, while initial reports said that a child may have accidentally set the foam on fire with a lighter. The foam rubber ignited like gunpowder. Within seconds, the entire room was on fire. The temperature shot up to 700 degrees Celsius. That's more than 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to melt metal and fill the hallways with thick, choking smoke. At first, people thought it was just a small fire, something that could be put out quickly. But within half a minute, the flames were raging across the ceiling. Survivors would later recall that in less than 25 seconds, the air went from clear to black and visibility dropped to 0. The mall's fire alarm system never went off. Inside one of the cinemas, children and parents sat in the dark, completely unaware that a disaster was unfolding just a few doors away. The mall security guards were cited for failing to promptly turn the voice alert system on, and that there is no reasonable explanation as to why that occurred. Some noticed the smell of smoke only when it began to creep into the theater. By the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late. The exits were locked. The cinema doors had been kept closed to stop people from sneaking into films without tickets. Those same doors sealed off any chance of escape. The fire and smoke quickly reached the theater level, and with the flames closing in, families were trapped. Some tried to break down the doors, others smashed windows, and a few managed to jump to safety. On the ground below, people watched in horror as dark clouds poured from the windows. As fire tore through the upper floors, fire exits were found to be blocked, and the one main staircase became clogged with smoke. Some mall workers tried to help, but there was no organized evacuation. Witnesses would later say that Tajik shopkeepers helped save around 50 people, leading them through a little-known back exit that most visitors didn't even realize existed. Those few who followed them survived.
As panic sets in, this boy asks, "Where's my dad?" And a woman shouts, "Just run, let's get out."
Outside, firefighters arrived quickly, but they couldn't get in. The flames were too intense. The smoke was too thick. The building's layout made navigation impossible. For 12 hours, they fought to gain access, unable to reach the upper floors where dozens were still trapped. The heat alone made it impossible for anyone to survive inside for long. Over 600 emergency workers were deployed that night, working tirelessly for 17 hours. But by then, it was too late. At least 64 people were found dead. 41 of them were children. The children's petting zoo, located near the play area, was also destroyed. Around 200 animals, rabbits, birds, and guinea pigs, all died in the flames. Investigators soon found that the fire alarm system hadn't worked for at least a week before the fire. The mall's private security staff had reportedly ignored the problem. One security guard even admitted to switching the alarm off manually when smoke began to appear, thinking it was a false alarm. One father, who lost 3 daughters in the fire, later told reporters that he personally led rescuers up the stairs toward where his children were trapped, but they refused to follow him, saying they had orders to go elsewhere. 4 people were arrested, including the head of the mall's management company and several safety inspectors. Experts later said that if the Winter Cherry had been equipped with a functioning sprinkler system, even a short delay of a few minutes could have saved dozens of lives. CCTV footage from inside the mall would later surface online. In the clip, you can see a woman crouching down to help her small daughter put on her shoes. Within seconds, less than 25 seconds, smoke floods the hallway, swallowing the screen in total darkness. If you enjoyed this video, check out this other video that YouTube thinks you will enjoy. Thank you.